You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
You're listening to Mission Log the Orville, an episode-by-episode discussion of the adventures of the crew of the USS Orville.
Welcome to another episode of Mission Log the Orville, a Roddenberry podcast, the show where we look at every episode of the Orville to look for meanings, morals, messages, and to see if it aligns with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. This week, Gently Falling Rain, the one where the Orville travels to Krill to sign a peace treaty. I'm Jessica Lynn Birdie.
And I'm Mike Richards, and with a title that nice, what could possibly go wrong?
Nothing. It's actually, we're done with the episode now.
Yeah. See you guys. The Orville is a conversation that depends on your participation. While we attempt to accommodate the totality of our combined mass. Share your thoughts, ideas, and tell us what we missed at ML_the Orville on Twitter, MissionLogPod on Facebook. You can always email us at missionlog-theorville@roddenberry.com. And if you're watching this on the Roddenberry YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe. And remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode. In fact, Mike Tucholsky on Facebook said, at Mike and Jessica. We did. At Mike and Jessica, I appreciated your comments in the most recent episode about the show moving away from comedy since season 1, and this season is just a continuation of that trend. I even changed the way I thought about season 3 when you reminded me that Trek often shifted between serious, comedy, and other genres, and the Orville is just doing the same.
That was actually something you pointed out.
Oh, thank you. And while I don't dislike season 3, I actually think it's more to my liking and more classic Trek than Discovery or Picard. I think the TLDR version of this is of why it isn't capturing me the same way is the first 2 seasons of the Orville is like TNG plus comedy, whereas season 3 of the Orville has been like TOS plus CGI. So we responded to that, and he made some really good points. Definitely more episodic. I think it's more sort of message, moral, meaning heavy, like the original series was, where it's like every show was its own more self-contained morality play, whereas TNG was much more character driven.
I actually respectfully disagree. I feel like this season's more TNG than anything. But also it's its own thing, and we can talk more about that. But we really are getting the barn burner sensation that David A. Goodman was talking about.
It's epic.
It's a different
It's
thing.
an epic barn burner that Tom was talking about, and David, and there's some other themes there that we heard in our supplementals also. But I will say I like what you said though, because it really is becoming its own thing. It's become its own thing.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us how it's become its own thing with the recap?
Oh, wish me luck.
Good luck.
Oh, heck yes. This episode is about the Krill. I really hope we get to see Talea. Is that you? Fear-mongering and grandstanding for a sea of angry Krill people? Exploiting their fear of change and way of life? It's almost like she took a page from the book of some 21st century figure or something. Apparently releasing Talea while an act of hope on Ed Mercer's part has once again created an even worse monster in Talea. Remember, she left teaching to join the military and seduce Ed. Well, now she left the military to become a politician. The current Supreme Chancellor is confident in his re-election. He shares while at a dinner with the Union delegates and the president of the Union. He acknowledges that she does have some followings, but the rationale of the people will win. In fact, he is so confident, he invites the Union to Krill to sign the treaty and celebrate his reinstatement. The crew of the Orville is also boozing it up at an 1800s style saloon, being on some part of the historical pub crawl, which sounds awesome, by the way. Just as things are about to get exciting with Isaac walking into this one-horse town, Ed and Kelly are taken away to a priority 1 call from Admiral Halsey. He informs them that there is a delegation being sent to Krill, and none other than the Orville is right for transport. They graciously accept and also rejoice that they were able to expertly hide the fact that they had been drinking.
It is a good day.
It's a good day. It is a good day. Ed is sobered up when he learns of Talea's political ambitions. Not only is he regretful for not listening to Kelly when she opposed Talea's release, both he and Kelly see her populist movement as a sincere threat to Chancellor Corrin's re-election. But once again, Ed can only hope that this will not affect the peace treaty. Admiral Halsey and Ensign Charlie Burke helm the shuttle through the rough cloud cover of Krill. When Ed suggests that he fly the shuttle instead of Halsey, Halsey tells Ed that he knew Ed and Kelly were drunk on the call, and that's the end of that conversation. The crew lands on Dalekos, a Vegas-esque night-fallen city. Admiral Halsey invites Ensign Burke to join the delegation rather than sit and wait on the shuttle and be part of history in the making. They meet the Chancellor, who is waiting for the last remaining districts to pour in from the voting. The margins have lessened, but he still remains confident. They toast to the future and are quickly interrupted by reality. Talea has won the last 7 districts. Within the blink of an eye, the Circle of Clerics pronounced Talea as Chancellor-elect, and former Chancellor Corrin is whisked away at gunpoint. This isn't an election, it's a coup. Before the president of the union can demand an answer to what is going on, he is clocked in the face, and the delegation is thrown into the brig. One of the Krill escorts locks a tractor beam onto the Orville with Kelly as acting captain. The Krill hail the Orville and tell them they are to be boarded and imprisoned. Tala is unable to reach the landing party, and as soon as the Krill hangs up, it's go time. Kelly orders Lamar to execute Directive 21 immediately with Dr. Finn, and also has Bortus shoot the Krill's tractor beam. They break free.
Did you say Directive 21?
I said Directive 21. Now hurry.
Okay. I'm just making sure.
Wow. They break free and engage in a firefight with Gordon inventing moves on the spot, barely keeping them ahead in the battle. The second Lamar tells Kelly that they have executed Directive 21, Mike, Kelly commands Gordon to go to Quantum and get the heck out of Dodge. Talea greets the masses of chanting Krill as the new Supreme Chancellor. After spouting more rhetoric, Corrin is dragged to the stage as an enemy of the Krill people. Talea serves justice by stabbing him in the stomach and ending his life. The crowd cheers at this deed, and she promises the blood of the president and the delegation next. Talea has Ed brought to her office, and after a Billy Joel reference that falls on deaf ears, Talea begins lambasting him. He tries to appeal to a broader sense of need, that the Union and the Krill need each other to defeat the Kaylon, but Talea assures Ed that new Krill weapons make an alliance for them moot. When he asks what happened to Chancellor Corrin, she confesses that his head can be found at the center of the Capitol. Ed tells Talea that this isn't her, but did Ed truly ever know Talea? Holding the delegation is an act of war, one Talea is prepared to start. She commands Ed to be taken away with execution to proceed as planned. After the doors close behind him, a Krill emerges from the shadows and hands Ed a cloak. He is told to don it with no questions asked. The Orville is hailed by Talea, and Kelly brings the heat. Demands of returning the delegation are denied, and Talea threatens the Orville as well if they do not leave while they still have their chance. Kelly is not backing down, and Talea sees a weakness in her armor, her feelings for Ed. What Talea doesn't realize is that her feelings for Ed are the very thing that will make this a bad situation for both of them. The call is ended abruptly, and Kelly calls the Union. Admiral Ted Danson says there is a formal state of war and says that a contingent of ships will arrive within 2 hours to assist in the extraction of the president and the delegation. A clandestine Ed is walked through the merchant center of the city. This certainly isn't the way back to the cell. After a particularly persistent meat vendor follows the group through an alley, they are attacked. Well, the Krill are, but by other Krill, and now they take charge of Ed and usher him in a different direction. Finally, they end up indoors, and Ed is rightfully confused, and so are we, honestly. It seems that Talea had decided to let Ed go, that the guards were doing just that, but the group that he's with now is part of an underground coalition that believes the treaty can still happen. A door is open, and a young Krill is revealed, only she isn't characteristically white, as all Krill are. She has human-esque skin. It is revealed to Ed that this is his daughter, a daughter he unknowingly conceived with Talea while she was masquerading as Janelle Tyler. Talea has had no contact with the child for fear of the impact a half-human daughter would have on her political aspirations, but she makes sure that her needs are provided for. He goes in to speak with his daughter, and is clear to not tell her who he is. He asks her what her name is. She sweetly responds, telling him her name is Anaya. Ed is in awe of her. Not only is she kind, she is smart. After assuring that she is in fact happy where she is, he learns from her caretaker that some would see Anaya as an abomination, but this contingency of Krill see that she could be the key to making the treaty actually happen. Reluctantly, Ed agrees to return to the capital. Admiral Ozawa and dozens of Union vessels arrive to rescue the delegation. While they hope to avoid a firefight, and who knows what's going on with Directive 21, they're prepared for extractions, whatever means necessary. Kelly leads them toward the Krill. A surprise Leia is confronted by Ed in her office. He reveals to her that he has met their daughter, Anaya. Ed tells Leia that the children are our future, to which Leia responds with, gently falling rain, which is what Anaya means. Emotions get heated, and when Leia denies Ed's request to celebrate Anaya in public, he yells at her, asking why she chose to give birth to Anaya, if only to lock her away. It would seem Ed does not understand the implications of that choice on Krill. She takes him to a facility that apprehends people who abort children. They create a simulated version of the child that they gave up and bring them to life in the simulator. They effectively shame and emotionally torture the would-have-been parents. She sends Ed back to his cell without answering his question, is this the kind of world you would want our daughter to be raised in? Once again, Leia stands before the bloodthirsty masses. She drags out the entire delegation just as the Orville and friends arrive in Krill's space. As a response, she launches all forces to intercept, and Leia plays with her food as she decides who to stab first. Eeny, meeny, miny. Oh, I guess it was the Union president. Just then, two Krill enter the stage and throw light that blinds Leia and her lackeys. They grab the president and rush the delegation off the stage. It isn't until they are in a shuttle that they learned that Directive 21 was successful. Dr. Claire and John Lamar successfully disguised as Krill to rescue them. The fighting in space continues, and the shuttle is pursued by the Krill. Nav goes out, but Charlie is able to deftly get them to the location of the Union shuttle. The shuttle breaks out of the clouded atmosphere into an array of lasers and ships. The shuttle is damaged, but they are able to crash land into the Orville docking bay. Once the delegation is secured, all Union ships disengage and get the Quantum out of there. The president will make a full recovery, and the Union can only see one course of action to restore talks with the Krill, Anaya. Ed smartly replies finally that she didn't ask to be born in the eye of the storm, and it's clear that Ed doesn't really know what Leia is capable of. Ed and Kelly look out on their peaceful planet while the sun is coming out tomorrow. Ed says that he misses his daughter, even though he briefly met her, and he fears he likely will never see them again. Ed vows to some way preserve some kind of peace for Anaya. Kelly and Ed walk off to have breakfast, and we fade out onto Leia watching her daughter on screen. The end.
Oh my God.
I know, that was a tough one for me.
It was, I mean, we'll get into the episode, but just so much. And so the, oh my God, was at the episode. Your recap was wonderful and definitely hit all the high points, nicely. So nice job.
As you have struggled with too, like there's so many fun things that happen, and sometimes it's just better to get to the point. But there's so much great story happening. And I even left out, I didn't realize until my second rewatch that the sun will come out tomorrow was an allusion to the end of that episode, or foreshadowing to the end of the episode, kind of.
There was some more stuff too that I think we can get to. That was really well done.
Great. Give us the deets.
Well, I was just wondering if first of all the shuttle landing on the Orville, they didn't have a barricade, so they couldn't use emergency shuttle landing plan B for barricade in Star Trek V, the Quest for God, I think it was called.
Among many reasons, that's why you're hired for this job, so you can really drive the Star Trek-esque back home.
Oh, yeah, I would definitely bring it. Speaking of Star Trek-esque, written by Brannon Braga and Andre Bormanis. So we just caught them a couple of episodes ago in Shadow Realms. It seems like they're kind of the Krill experts at this point.
Right.
With Identity, Nothing Left on Earth Excepting Fishes, and also Into the Fold, which was not a Krill episode, but still a really good one. Directed this week by John Cassar, music by Joel McNeely. Special guest cast, Bruce Boxleitner as President Alcazan. And first thing I want to say is, man, can he take a hit. He takes a rifle butt to the face.
Right.
He gets stabbed in the same way that killed former Supreme Chancellor Corrin. Boxleitner was just up. He was just up and at him, man.
He did the Picard pull when he got hit in the face.
I noticed that same thing. He did. Okay. He did the Picard maneuver when he got up.
He did.
So, man, if Bruce Boxleitner has been to Space Command, all over the Tron franchise, Animen, was an animated series, did some voice work. Heroes, The Outer Limits. Gotta throw the Scarecrow and Mrs. King in there. Pretty sure he guest starred on The Love Boat sometime in his career. And
I think everyone did.
Yeah. And also as John Sheridan on Babylon 5 in the Babylon 5 franchise. So he's been everywhere. Charlie Townsend, the little girl that played Anaya, absolutely adorable. She's got 2 credits on her IMDb page. One for a show called Tots, and LA's Finest, which is the Gabrielle Union, Jessica Alba Bad Boys spin-off television series, a Spectrum original.
Oh.
Which I think is now available on Netflix also. Victor Garber is back as Admiral Halsey. I'll kind of cut right to the chase. I have this in my notes later on. When I grow up, I want to be like Admiral Halsey. He communicates well. He teaches. He converses. He kind of leads people to the decisions he wants to. He wants them to make in many ways. He's inclusive. Sure. I think he's a great leader, great communicator, and he thinks his way through the problems and kind of comes to a logical conclusion. That's how I read him.
We've only seen him try to do the best he can in interests, whereas someone might say you can't go back and get them. And we saw Ozawa say that, and Perry has done that. We've seen Halsey, and maybe it's because he cares about Kelly a little bit more.
I think there's something to that, as a daughter.
Closer to her that. But we have seen him make maybe more emotional choices, but that have worked out for the best.
Sure. You can tell he cares.
Yes.
Ted Danson, who absolutely just owns the role of Admiral Perry, is a much more top-down, sort of old school, I'm the Admiral, I'm giving orders, Perry out, hangs up on you, kind of thing. He just owns that role. Kelly, who also wonderful as Admiral Ozawa back. And Lisa Baines, if you notice the beginning of the episode, it was dedicated to Lisa Baines, who passed away. She played the Chilean diplomat, Spiria Balask was her name. She was, this comes from a New York Times article. She was a mainstay, of the New York stage. Also acted in films including Gone Girl, known for her wry humor and confident, elegant presence. She appeared in more than 80 television and film roles, as well as countless stage productions. Sadly, she died 10 days after she was struck by a scooter as she was crossing a street in Manhattan. This happened last summer. So thus the episode being dedicated to her and our sympathy, empathy, and just love go out to her family and friends and community that she left behind, because she seemed like a wonderful person by all accounts.
Wow. So we won't see her in an episode until the finale, apparently, right? Or
that I don't know.
That's what I'm reading here. What an unfortunate thing.
Truly. And it was a hit and run accident as well. So they did end up finding the individual. She lived in Los Angeles. She was out doing some work and visiting family in New York. So very sad. And of course, we had Michaela McManus back as Talea, who we love, and we were shipping Talea and Ed at one point, maybe not anymore. I don't know. I'll move on.
I'm sorry, I was confused. She was. I didn't realize that her makeup was so subtle as a Talayan, so I was confused. She was the senator.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Diplomat or senator.
She was a senator, I believe.
Okay.
And they kind of went really quickly about who each of those characters were.
Sure.
I don't think I would have known that the guy was the president if he didn't look like an amalgam of, George Washington,
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, he had all that going for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was a senator.
As well as I'm going to guess probably some blue blood.
I was going to say he gets a little. He blushes. He might blush.
Yeah.
He might be. He might be a Lothario.
Blusher.
He might be a blusher. Hey, I don't kink shame here. But so here's the thing. I was so disappointed off the bat that Talea had become this Trump-esque character, which
and just all the way back, yes, most recently, but all the way back through populist politics. When you don't have policy on your side, and you don't have the ability or the knowledge to run a government, organize a government, administer. You just go out there and you just tell people everything that the government's doing wrong, stoke anger, play on their fear. And that's what populists do, and that's why they get elected, and that's why they do pretty awful things once they're elected, because they don't know how to govern. They don't understand governance.
Yeah, that's a good point. And perhaps my education is limited to what's been going on recently. Mm-hmm. I think it's no coincidence that there's an allegory here. Because you're also dealing with, what do they call that, influence politics or something, like with the videos that were fake.
Yeah.
Which is basically our deep fake. We have no idea when something's faked or when they're using videos from something previously. And everything is spin. So it just made me so sad. I was like, how can she come back from this? Okay, so I'll let you know how I feel about shipping them after we get through this.
Good deal. I wanted to point out Isabella Meneses, I believe is her name is pronounced as Zelaya Nanny. The only other credit she has is as small girl on Star Trek Picard season 2, episode The Watcher. So just almost one step above an extra with a line in there, but she obviously had much more to do, and they took much more advantage of her talents on the Orville than the other franchise did, with her playing small girl, who I saw that episode. She did not stand out, and she did not sing. So much better job working with children on the Orville, I would say.
It was a matter of time before there was a Broadway musical in an Orville episode, thanks to Seth MacFarlane. You know what I mean? Just
so good.
Everyone has either done Annie, seen Annie, been to an Annie production, had a child in Annie. I was in a production that married. It was called Orphans, and it was little orphan Annie gets her head hit so hard by Miss Hannigan that she transports into Oliver Twist era. And I played Nancy, and we.
Please tell me this was improv.
No. Oh. This was written by my middle school drama teacher. So I played Nancy, and we lived in that world with Fagin and all of them, with Annie trying to figure it out with Oliver Twist. And we stopped. She went back to New York in her real time right before my character was killed, because it was my character is supposed to be killed with domestic abuse. It's very dark ending to Oliver Twist.
Middle school.
Is Orphans. It's actually insanely perfect. It's so anyway, my point is, of course, 500 years, 400 years, 300 years in the future, they're still performing Little Orphan Annie. It's not surprising. It's just is the perfect. It's the perfect Broadway musical to be performing 400 years from now. And
it was, and like you mentioned, the foreshadowing of the sun will come out tomorrow.
The prophecy of the child.
So it was good, but I just that first speech, and we hit on that with Talea a little bit before, and I think, if you've seen Star Trek VI anytime,
years ago,
the chancellors, or not the chancellor, but the Klingon chancellor, I think he was also was killed, and his daughter kind of took the reins, and she kind of spoke with that same sort of, people think my father was an idealist, had that same kind of like weird stress on the different syllables, syllables, the wrong emphasis on the syllables. And when she did that in one of her speeches, and then she said, "Kirk will pay. he will pay. And she kind of looked right at the camera. And I was really glad that they didn't do that same, technique, breaking the fourth wall kind of thing in that opening scene. Because I thought she was going to look at the camera.
Here's what's so awesome, though. So they watch a clip, when Halsey's aboard the Orville and is telling Ed, revealing the news that she's become radicalized, essentially. They do a freeze frame on her, and she's looking down, and it's like, a clip where she's like looking down at, the people she's talking to. And Ed looks up at her, and that's the frame that we leave the episode, this scene on. The way she's looking down, it's the exact perspective as though she were looking at him. So It looks like they're looking at each other, and it is so simple and could be easily overlooked, but it is impactful.
I'm going to tell you how easily it was overlooked. I overlooked it. I didn't catch that. So good on you for catching that.
You wouldn't have.
Yeah.
It just was... it just was one of those things where he's looking at her wistfully and disappointed, and she just happens to be looking in the exact, like a good painting, the eyes always follow you around. The way it was just a really nice, smart touch, and maybe Tom Costantino was the reason for it. It was just really expert level, chef's kiss touch to it.
Very nice. You mentioned the, Zelay and Annie, but, there's that old adage in TV and movies that say never work with children or animals. And I guess W.C. Fields said that.
The first pilot I directed worked with both.
Oh, interesting.
Not only like a little mouse, but like 50 children. I was like a guest director.
What was that like? The 50 kids.
We shot 21 pages in one day, and it was insane.
Okay.
But we did it.
Good.
It happened. All these kids wanted to be famous, so it was able to be done.
But, and I look at, B.J. Tanner is not hardly a child anymore, but,
No.
You could argue that in 2017 he was a young actor.
Sure.
Kai.
Right. But you're also dealing with someone who's super professional because of Kai.
Absolutely. But, getting the right people to manage and direct is right. And what they did with Anaya and what they did with the girl who played Annie, and I'm sure there's other examples. They do a wonderful job with kids on the show. Star Trek always kind of struggled with kids on the show. I'm going to say this. I think it's casting. I think it's making sure that you can get the right kid people that can perform. Some kids can do really well on the first audition, but it's like Spielberg. I think you may have talked about this before. Spielberg was really good at getting great performances out of kids, but he also knew which kids to cast. And don't get me wrong, there's another aspect of it too. I got to see a director at Sundance talk about this, and it was I can't remember the first movie he directed, but this other movie he directed was called Wendy, and it was basically a modern day retelling of Peter Pan. And someone's like, how do you work with all these kids? How do you get them to do what you want them to do? And these kids were not even actors. They were just kids in this town, and you got them to portray these roles, I think he cast a wide net, but they weren't actors necessarily. And he goes, I'm friends with these kids. I'm not asking this kid to do 13 hours in a day, which you actually legally can't do. But I'm asking my friend, hey, do you mind if we do one more shot? We're buds. So there's a way that you can relate to people in general, and children are just little people, and ask them for help, and they'll do the job. That's really good. Kind of the idea of getting them involved in the process, and then they'll own it.
You
some
treat
more.
them like a human,
yeah.
And then you'd be like, my dad is very good at he knew how to talk to us. If we were 5, he knew how to talk to a 5-year-old, but not pedantically or patronizingly. And if I was 16, he knew how to talk to a 16-year-old. You can do that and get your point across, and in a respectful way too. So you probably have John Cassar doing that really well, and Seth and all them.
I think it works well with me, with the two I'm responsible for. So I have a question for you.
Oh gosh.
Bortus had a child, right, named Topa.
Yes.
When he told people that he was going to lay an egg, Ed was like, seriously? You have eggs? Nobody knew that
how they reproduce.
That Mocklins laid eggs.
Right.
But Charlie Burke knows that Mocklins can't grow facial hair. Which
we don't know
which to me to me, that brings her up. That kind of brings her up. It's like, all right, she's doing some homework on her crewmates.
That, or she dated a Mocklin. She probably did not,
True.
actually. She probably did not. I'm just realizing what I just said.
Well, there was the one,
Yeah, I know, but I just realized, though, probably not. She's also really smart, but you're totally right. We criticized them early on, like the captain should know.
Yeah.
Especially with his spouse on board, like what that could entail. You know? Should have.
So we got Water Wars to look forward to.
Oh, I'm not looking forward. The thing is, it's like, it's so prescient and so true. We have no idea how badly we're abusing this resource we think is renewable. And
20-ish years ago, wars in the 20th century were fought over oil. In the 21st century and beyond, they're going to be fought over water. So that was, something that was put in there, and hey, we got that to look forward to. So
what would you rather, Water Wars or Water World?
I guess, and then it's just you got the wrong kind of water, so you got to fight over the right kind, I guess.
Right. Fair.
Yeah. So
I'm not looking forward to it.
I liked the scene with John and Tala. Kind of the little flirty, maybe just sort of, maybe just looking at each other and, maybe a different light as equals now. Instead, maybe that opens up some doors, or maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think if Halcyon Stage had stayed, we would have seen an arc where her and Sean were possibly going to date. I think so. What I can respect is not just if that's true, right? I'm just making a baseless assumption. I can respect that they didn't go, oh, well, just enter New Zealand and
unplug her, plug her in.
Correct.
And, I like that
Then
they took the time to let it
correct.
Cook.
And it was sort of natural, and it was a really charming, cute moment. And I think I saw someone else tweet about this, like there's a little bit of genuine chemistry there, and I like that you don't need to hit us over the head with it, know.
No. Yeah, it was just a
do you
nice
ship it?
seat. I do. I'd like to see those two together. I think that'd be fun. And of course they were interrupted because the show is the master of interruptions at the perfect time.
Right. That's called comedic timing, my friend.
That's it. So we like Charlie Burke now. We like her. We're going to invite her to go places with us and go down to the planet. And
you know what I do like? And I don't hate her, obviously. She really has a steep hill to climb. But what I do like, and it was a little forced, but when Charlie is in the cell and is talking to Ed, who is really feeling hopeless, it says, we need them. We need to find a way to make them see that this is only going to be beneficial for us both. And instead of taking credit for the idea, Ed goes, my ensign was right, which to Leia would have no idea that his ensign said that.
Right.
So he wouldn't have had to say that. But it was respectful that, and also, to be fair a little bit, everyone has been saying that it's beneficial to both of them. This is not news, but Charlie said it, and he repeated it how Charlie said it. So I thought that was good that he respected that.
Yeah, and that's good leadership, is giving credit to the people on your team that came up with the ideas. Now, there might have been also a little bit of like, even my ensign can see this. And that's a good point.
Are
a chancellor.
Right.
But you're right. I don't think that was there. I didn't pick the subtext out of that. What I did get was him giving credit to one of his people, which I thought was great. He also, I like the scene. Also, I think it might have been the same scene when they were in the cell when he said, "I'm really sorry I got you involved in this. I shouldn't have brought you." And she was like, "Well, are we going to war now?" Like, she was all business. She wasn't feeling sorry for herself. She wasn't. I'm not even supposed to be here today. To like Randall and Clerks, or maybe it was the other guy in Clerks. I haven't seen Clerks in a while.
I think no one wanted to be there in Clerks.
Yeah, just nobody wanted. Nobody was supposed to be there.
I can assure you, we are open. Yeah, it was a really interesting thing to include her, especially when, apropos of nothing, one of the Krill dudes is like, "So, Ensign, what do you think of our town?" And it's like, why are you talking to her even? Like,
yeah.
You just met her. It was interesting, though.
Yeah.
And we got to kind of she got to help us see the world a little bit. So, again, like I said, that character has a steep hill to climb with the audience. I think she has, by not just immediately being cool with Isaac, not going back on some of her core beliefs, I can respect that. I think that's good writing. And here's what I will say. You don't need to be friends with everybody you work with. You do need to respect them, though. And that's something I forget sometimes, especially in doing improv. But I want to be friends with everybody.
I thought you were going to say podcasts.
Well, hey, we can talk about that after. No, you want to unpack that right now, Mike? Hello, joke. Hello?
Hello?
God, it was a joke?
I got it.
Yeah,
I
okay.
got it.
Okay. So, I can almost respect more that they're showing that, hey, the workplace doesn't need to be everyone's a happy family for it to be a functional workplace.
Right.
As long as Charlie can respect Isaac and the choices, etc., I think she's going to be okay.
I think she'll be too. And you think of the obvious, storyline where the two of them, end up in a jam together and some mutual
And we're
respect
probably
is
heading
built.
toward that for sure.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not.
So on the shuttle ride down, which is, they brought Charlie to navigate. I'm hearing a lot of chatter on the interwebs about her being a helmsman or a pilot, and Gordon not being the best pilot in the Union anymore because she can see in 4 dimensions. Charlie is a navigator. Gordon is the helmsman. She was there to navigate, and that's why Admiral Halsey was at the helm. So I just wanted to give some feedback to people that are kind of confused on the roles up front.
That's
navigator,
totally fair.
Navigator, pilot, that kind of thing. So the president said, "The night falls fast. Today is in the past." And the Chilean senator said, "What is that from?" And he said, "It's from a poem." Well, the poem is called "Not So Far as the Forest" by the author Edna St. Vincent Millay. And the poem, I won't bore you with the whole thing, but the accepted interpretation is that it's about the onset of winter and a bird that becomes trapped in the harsh weather and is never again free. So as that shuttle, a.k.a. a flying thing like a bird, descends into the Krill atmosphere and the dark, this harsh environment, they may find themselves trapped and never again be able to be free. So
How ominous, Dr. President.
So ominous, Dr. President.
What is it? Commander Dick? What was that?
Oh, Captain Dick?
Captain Dick? Yeah.
Nice poem, Captain Dick. Man, we haven't drunk that one out in a while. I'm glad we got that one back. That juice looked tasty, man. The one, I forget what they called it.
The one with the original TOS episode.
Tranya. Yeah, with the Corbomite maneuver.
The Tranya. Yeah. Apparently it's like peach juice, right?
I've heard some different versions of it, but yeah, I know they were making one at Cork's Bar the last time that was licensed in STLV. They had Tranya on the menu.
Tranya. So I'm thinking it's like a mixture of cherry and like cranberry.
Yeah,
it was very dark.
Like. Yep, it was dark, but definitely with a reddish or almost kind of that very krill purple color.
I was waiting though. I was waiting for them to be like, "Yes, we have squeezed the abdomen of many bugs." I really
exactly. I thought it was going to be good. Yeah, I thought it was going to be kind of a skid.
Well, because think about
joke.
It, they don't have
light.
And so the crops must be of something or other. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm curious what the crops are is all. So,
but they take great pride in their crops.
They do. I don't know how they friggin' grow them. So
I don't know either.
They obviously are doing okay. And they might have a lot of nightshades and rooted plants, but I don't think I want to know what a cupsid is.
A lot of tubers on krill.
Yeah. Yes.
Man, did you see how fast everybody turned their back on Corin when the election was lost? The clerks were like, Parvok
was one of his lackeys.
Oh, okay.
Was like, Parvok. He goes, "Well, hands are in the will of Avis now."
Yeah.
Or whatever.
I know. Yeah. And then the circle of clerks were like, "Nope, it is done." And then the guards come in and drag him away.
I mean, it's obviously for like this literature license for sure, but
it
Parvok, or whatever his name is, obviously was on Talea's side.
Right.
The Circle of Clerics obviously were.
Correct.
So they all, there was a coup for
and
sure.
Yes, and absolutely, and the fact that the comment was made earlier that this, his relatively moderate attitude and his willingness to sign the treaty indicates to many that he's out of touch. So I mean, he just like I said, that I think was really the point that they were trying to drive, was that you can be progressive, but if you're surrounded by people that are trying to do anything and everything to stop that progress, then you're not going to have a lot of wiggle room.
There's so much about this episode, not only just being excellent storytelling and finally like a really strong Ed-centric episode, which we really needed, or like I really wanted. They're incredibly prescient. And don't get me wrong, these are issues that we've been dealing with in our country, let alone the world, for many years. And so it's like I said, it's no surprise that Talea is an allegory for Trump or a populist, politician. But
they've been cropping up all over the world.
This is true.
Like we pay attention to U.S. politics, obviously, but all over the world, authoritarian populists are getting voted in.
You've got a good point, and yeah. I get. We will get to this in a little bit, how people are convinced to vote against their better interests. That's very frustrating and scary. And these kind of icons can inspire that in people. But how prescient of them to basically do their own version of 1/6 a little bit, which is the coup where they stormed the Senate.
Yeah.
In a sense, it's not. There's certain things that you can expect to happen when people are radicalized, including taking over the government, what have you.
Right. And also, when Corrin said, in elections this close, it's a given that there'll be a challenge, and those challenges are always honored.
And when Trump challenged this election.
And what we saw was anything in our history that was accepted as the norm because of precedent and the honor system and things like that just were shredded. I mean, were just bulldozed through. So
one of my favorite quotes is the deadliest words in the English language are, "But we've always done it this way." Deadliest might be hyperbole on my point, just not misremembering it, but it's pretty impactful.
Yeah.
I think it's just really thoughtful writing and and using, their platform to talk about some things that we could stand to reflect on a little bit.
Yeah, we definitely could. You mentioned a strong Ed episode, which was, and I really do admire Seth MacFarlane and the creative team for not making it a show that's all about him every week, a la Star Trek: The Original Series. He's been kind of very much in the background in these and several, say at least two of the first 4 episodes.
He's still our moral backbone in every episode.
Absolutely, but doesn't have to hog the screen time. Isn't so insecure that he's got to jump in front of the camera and take other people's lines. Like maybe another captain in a different franchise was, reportedly had done to other people.
No,
I've heard. I wasn't there. It could all be wrong.
He was jealous of his first officer? No,
maybe.
But I read a slash fiction that said otherwise.
Oh, yes. Well, Slash saved Star Trek: The Original Series. There's no doubt about that.
Go watch Jesse Gender's episode on that and watch me and Mary Chiefo play Kirk and Spock in like one of the original Slash fictions. We just do like the couple lines of that, not the explicit parts, but it's pretty fun.
Well, I'm going to have to get some sleep, and you just keep giving me stuff to do.
Sorry.
It's okay. I love
sorry,
it.
not sorry.
I love, but in the last 3 episodes, I think going into the haunted house, Ed made some kind of comment in that show, I think, along the lines of, yeah, this was a mistake. We shouldn't have done this. Right. And then also, walking around the creepy high school, or maybe it was in the Chilean raft, or maybe it was in the Mauchline morgue. At some point, he said, this was a mistake. We never should have left the ship. And today he said to Charlie Burke, this was a mistake. We shouldn't have brought you along. And I think it's important for a leader to have that kind of ability to admit mistakes and learn from them and let them know that, the people that you're serving, let them know that you recognize that you made a mistake and you're going to learn from it and do better next time, or at least apologize for it. When he apologized to Kelly for a decision he made over a year ago to let Talia go, that was powerful, man. I mean, that was, like, I owe you an apology. And she was like, for what?
Yeah.
And he was like, I should have listened to you. And not only did he not listen to her, he was like, noted, and kept walking.
Right. And also, just to your point, in the first episode of New Horizons, he tells Charlie outright, I don't know if I made the right decision with keeping
That's
Isaac
right.
on.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to... We've already seen Ed Mercer's arc of not being sure whether he's fit to be captain or not.
Right. Yeah.
So that's not what we're heading towards. I think we're seeing him literally just fall into this role with just like supreme. We're watching him become a great captain.
Yes.
Worthy of history in the making. All I can think about, all these other entries in 200 years, people are going to be reading about Ed Mercer, who didn't know he was going to make history, who didn't set out to make history.
Well, we're not going to be unless we can get David Goodman to write the autobiography of Ed Mercer, which he told us right here on the show that he was not going to write.
I could
David
do it.
Goodman.
I'll do it, David. I'll co-write. I'll ghostwrite for you, David. It's a great example of it's a great example of masculinity and leadership, and it's not, we don't need to make it about gender, etc., because I actually think a person is happy and full when they've accepted all versions of themselves, like the masculine and the feminine. But then that's even binary way to look at things. But like, good men can also be soft and vulnerable.
Exactly. And what we see is, especially, in my career, we look at leadership and, decision making and things like that. And when you have somebody who is insecure in their decision making ability, insecure in their ability to convince other people what the best course of action is and build that consensus, they're going to fall back on, I'm the captain of the ship. I'm in command, and we're going to do it because I say so. Well, if you have to rely on that, then that means, like, by definition, you're unable to convince other people that your idea has merit and is the best way to go. So you fall back on that captain's authority thing. And it could be a captain, it could be a manager, it could be a CEO, it could be whoever's in charge of a small group, a small fire team, or whatever it is. If you have to fall back and yell and say, I'm in charge, we're doing it this way, chances are you're probably making a pretty crappy decision. Now, you may be right and everybody else may be wrong. And if that's the case, you better be right.
Yes. You've talked about this several times. I think.
Oh, yeah, it's important to me.
I think it is important, and it's making me reflect on the times that I've been fortunate to be in the position of leadership.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I've always done it so well. I think I do it better now, but because I think I have a penchant towards leadership.
And I look back at the days of airline flying, and it wasn't just airlines; it was boat captaining and stuff like that too. So you put one guy in charge, they make all the decisions. Nobody else is allowed to say anything. Now the combined knowledge, skill, and judgment of all the people in that group is limited to how smart is the guy in charge, because nobody else is willing to contribute. Not willing, allowed to contribute anything.
Allowed to, yeah.
So if you have an environment where people are allowed to say, Directive 21, yep. That's the one. Okay, just making sure. And you say, Captain, all 26 torpedoes in one shuttle? Yep, just do it. And you want me to skim the atmosphere? Yep, I do. And if you get people that can offer to do the expanding helix maneuver that they just thought of, now everybody's smarter and the whole team works better.
Right.
So it's really, really important, I think, to have that open line of communication. Because we've talked a couple of times on this show about, like, doesn't anybody on the ship just follow an order? But there's nothing wrong with, I heard this from a great person once: stop, challenge, choose. Right? I heard that from you. That you before you act, you would stop, kind of challenge the assumptions, and then choose your next course of action. And that gives you the ability to.
She sounds pretty smart.
She is smart. She's talented, and she's the co-host of Mission Log the Orville.
Oh, so the other co-host I hear.
The other co-host, yeah. I'm not talking about me. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, I think it's a really, really neat dynamic on the crew that they are able to, and empowered to ask those kind of questions, even in the heat of battle.
You don't have to do this, but when you have a show that is as broadly available as this one, as so many other TV shows are, there is some sort of social responsibility to some extent. I think you don't have to do that. I think art is art is art. And so if you don't want to have social responsibility, that's fine. But I think we're seeing the Orville do really well with the responsibility that they want to have in exemplifying a world that they would like to see. So, it's only getting better. It's only getting better.
I tell you what, as much as I want to talk about the Krill pole dancers, it's probably time to move on to the next segment of the show.
Of course you would want to. Well, that's just a cat's tail. That's the end of the cat's tail. I'll see you on the other side.
All right.
Okay, so we've come to the part of the show where we're going to explore the big ideas in the episode Gently Falling Rain, aka Anaya, and discuss the messages, morals, and meanings, and discuss further whether or not the episode aligns with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. Mike.
First of all, I'll go back and reword that for next time, so
Great.
it doesn't say discuss twice.
Hey.
That's 100% on me.
Hey, stop challenge choose. I don't know.
I did want to, talk a little bit about the, populist politicians. And,
Okay.
I just looked up a definition. Politician who strives to appeal to ordinary people who feel that their concerns are disregarded by established elite groups. And that's okay. Like, everybody should be represented. So if there's a group that's not being represented, if there's a group that is their concerns are being disregarded, they deserve to have somebody represent them, right? That's what representative, democracy is kind of about. But when folks just kind of like whip up, use emotions to whip up violent tendencies, then that's where things go wrong. And that's what often happens with populism is they play on the emotions of people to get them to act and vote in a way that's not in their best interest. That's only in the best interest of the person trying to become, I'll just say, Supreme Chancellor.
Yeah.
Because they're not talking about us. We're talking about the Krill, right?
We're not talking about us.
We're not talking about us. It's the Krill.
I'm not a Bernie bro, but I'm kind of a Bernie bro,
Yeah.
even though I voted for Biden because it didn't make sense to write in Bernie's name or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to know that, I think Bernie's a populist as well. He's also a politician, but he is also a populist, but he's the version that fills people with hope.
Right.
Quote unquote. But we're living in a social media era, where if something is hateful, it gets more engagement. Which is why then you have Russia sending off memes for both Democrats and Republicans, further polarizing us, just pissing us off. It's a tough world we're living in right now.
It really is. And and people just buy into that rhetoric that they're fed to further polarize themselves. Loved the line, political vacuums are dangerous things. And then the response was, if no one fills them with hope, someone will fill them with fear.
Right. I think the fear is where we are in this country very deeply right now. And, we've been there several other times before, Cold War era, pre-Civil War era, post-Civil War era. It is a great motivator. It makes people spend money. War is very profitable. And it's, I think you said it right, that it doesn't, I think it's really it's really harmful when people are convinced to vote against their best interests to the point where it's even further solidifying another thing that this episode brings up, which is reproductive rights. The fact that so many women can vote for politicians that don't view women as autonomous creatures is completely voting against their best interests. Or telling other people that they don't have rights over their bodies too.
It's to me, to some people, it's a very simple argument. It's a case of black and white, and to me, it's a very, very, very complex situation. Women in certain states are going to have ectopic pregnancies, and they're going to have other situations that if they do not have access to that kind of procedure, they are going to die.
I'm just going to offer this. It doesn't matter whether it's a serious, life-threatening, or horrible circumstance under which someone has gotten pregnant. It can be as simple as they don't want to have the child also for economic reasons. I think there's this penchant towards, but the worst case scenario, this is at least needs. I don't care whether you think I should or shouldn't. I should be able to. And the thing that gets overlooked so willfully is no one who makes the decision to have an abortion is making an easy decision.
Right.
No one is. And it's no one. If 1% of people are doing it, 1% of people are using it as birth control, and also that's their right too.
Yeah.
And no one has the right to force someone into doing something that they don't want to do.
So looking at the the cruel punishment of making a simulation of the kiddo, and when Tiffany and I decided not to have any more kids, we had two. We have two. We have two.
We
have to. We decided not to have any more. And I had a dream of about a half dozen, sort of toddlers, kind of surrounding me. And one of them looked up and said, "But Daddy, what about me? Why don't you want me? Aren't I good enough?"
Yikes.
Like I still remember that.
Yikes.
Like that was so, and that was just a decision not to have anymore. People that it is a, and that's why I mean it's so complex. It's such a hard decision that will have. It's just a really, really hard decision that is going to, I think people that make that decision are going to do to themselves what the Krill were doing to them, which is make them imagine this unborn child. Like,
yes.
That is going to happen anyway.
I think it's no matter what, I don't know one person that doesn't have some sort of reverence for, I did this, I made this choice, but I grieve the loss also.
Right.
It's, I thank God. I thank God that I don't believe in that I have yet to have to make that decision. I don't know what I would make. That I don't want to have to. I'm grateful that I haven't been put in that position, and that's sharing a little bit more personal information about me than anyone might want. But I don't discount the emotional and seriousness of the situation that it is for people.
Well, when Tiffany had a ectopic pregnancy, she had an egg fertilized in the tube because apparently my boys can swim, and got all the way up in there, and so it started It started growing there, not down where it should. Had that been allowed to continue, it never would have been a viable, entity, but it would have kept growing to the point that it would have killed her. That procedure is going to get more and more difficult to get, and that's really unfortunate.
I think it does circle back to it's all under the guise of what a God says that we should and should not be doing, a Bible that says that we should or should not be doing. This is supposed to be a country where we are allowed to practice the faith that we believe in, and by forcing people to adhere to a belief of one faith is completely the antithesis of that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I was going to say, and the disappointing part is, I mean, just to kind of parse words, and this is what is really, really disappointing, is that the Supreme Court did not outlaw abortion. They just left it up to the states. The part that's really disappointing is the number of states that will outlaw it and how they're going to treat people. In one state, a person who ends their pregnancy either by pill or by other means will face up to 2 years in prison and a fine of $1,000. Okay. In another state, legislation's moving along that would classify an abortion as homicide because it will extend personhood to a fertilized egg, and homicide in that state is punishable by death or life without the possibility of parole. So the Supreme Court did what it did, which basically doesn't guarantee the freedom to do it, right? It said we're going to leave it up to the states. What's really, really disappointing is how many states are just like jumping on board that already have laws in place, trigger laws they're called,
right? Yeah, it became
to take advantage. It became
illegal
of this
in
ruling.
13 states immediately, I think.
Yeah.
I actually counter your disappointment with further disappointment, if not more. The Democrats have had an opportunity to get this into law for 50 years and haven't, and have been platforming on this for 50 years or 30 years, let's say, right? So we're just all being bamboozled by all of them, and it's very disheartening. So I can see why a populist might do really well in this culture.
Back to your argument that you made a long time ago. It was something to campaign on, to get people fired up to vote for them. That's 100%. That's what the issue is used for.
It's a game where it's like, hey, look at this thing that we think is important while we're screwing you everywhere else, and that's 100% it. And people are instead being riled emotionally. I don't think you and I either of us had this conversation lightly. I don't think we're uneducated when it comes to that. We're not unsympathetic with other people's views or beliefs, but it does cross a line for me when when anyone tells me I can't do a certain thing because they don't believe in it.
Yeah. Yes, I believe that it's a choice. It's an important choice. It's a difficult choice.
Over one's body. One's body. Not over. I don't have the choice to. I don't, get to run the traffic laws or whatever, because that's endangering other people. I have a choice over my body and my well-being. I do.
Right.
And it's not an easy choice.
And I applaud the show for bringing up the topic, and I applaud the show that was 3 years in the works for bringing it up, and it happening to drop the day before the Supreme Court ruling was released. I will say this: the actual real world punishments are so much worse than what even that are proposed are so much worse than what even the Krill do. So just think about that, people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very chilling moment when Ed says, "So what did you have her for?"
Yeah.
It's chilling.
Yep, and very well done, because there's that scene is often done where, people are talking one at a time, and then they start talking over each other, and then they start talking louder, and then there's that one big loud, question at the end that brings it to a head. And we've seen that, that same, conversational technique used time and time again. But it was done really well and really, really cut to the core of that argument.
It was great acting, and it was wonderful writing, because they also didn't get on their high horse. They did happen to show two very viable sides of a very difficult conversation.
Right.
I will say this too. I don't know if I kind of alluded to this in the episode or my recap. I am so glad that Ed woke up and didn't want to make Anaya the center of the political apex.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, yo, she is not the miracle. She does not have to, that is not her responsibility. And so I'm glad by the end, at least, he acknowledged that.
I think, now, when he went back to see Talia, it was basically to convince Talia to, for the sake of the child, move forward and coexist, right?
I agree.
He wasn't saying, hold her up and say anything, I don't think.
No, he did say, we should stand in front of people and show them that we're proud of her.
Right, he did.
I think his heart was broken for his daughter that doesn't get to know the love of her actual mother. Is, you know what I mean? I think that was the main motivation for him. But I could see the character wrestling with the idea of, am I really going to make her the crux of this argument? And so it was good just to hear him say it out loud that she shouldn't have been.
So let me ask you this, because your recap ended with Talia is looking at her daughter ominously.
Well, so I didn't say ominously, but I wrote question mark ominously, and I decided to take it out.
because the reason I ask is because I read a recap on another website that said motherly. And I was like, wow, that is left up to the eye of the interpreter, because I thought it could have been either.
It's either. I think it's either. I think it's meant to be either, because you also hear the thing that was the most disappointing was the betrayal of Talea totally not letting it, like just being totally radicalized. We thought we knew Talea just the same way that Ed knew her, thought he knew her, and then saying, I'm honestly not sure what she would do, does make us have the question mark at the end where she probably is looking at her daughter lovingly. But
you fool, you're still holding on to an illusion that she created over a year ago.
He wait, how old is the baby though?
Apparently about a year. I guess they grow up with, I guess they're on Topa Mocklin baby vitamins.
We have yet to see Topa. I bet you Topa's older than BJ Tanner now. I think it's left up to interpretation. When I rewatched it, I think she's looking after her lovingly. I think there's a lot of love in her eyes. I think she loves Ed. I think we might see a heel turn again, you know. But I think the field is laid for all sorts of things.
Yeah, including Breakfast with Ed and Kelly. Ed and Kelly in the morning.
Ed and Kelly in the morning. I was about to do Breakfast at Tiffany's, but you are right. This is the Community spinoff. So Ed and Kelly in the morning.
So who knows? Maybe we're looking at that, or maybe they're just playing it back and forth. You think?
Mike,
yeah.
What do you think?
This episode reminded me somewhat of A Taste of Armageddon, somewhat of Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. The one whereas I'm white on the right side. All of my people are white on the right side. His people are black on the right side.
Right.
So where the solution is so obvious, right? Work together, coexist, cooperate, collaborate.
And listen.
Let people do. Let you do you, with respect and with respect. But instead, that base emotion, that defensiveness, insecurity, fragility, all get in the way and just completely destroy any progress that may have been made earlier. Just because the future, terrifies us and the past tempts us, and people want to go back to the past when they're terrified by the future. I read the whole poem by Percy Shelley. It's called Ozymandias. And it's short, but instead of boring it with you, Ed hit all the highlights. And bottom line, hubris has a way of coming back to bite you in the ass. And that's one of many, many, many meanings, morals, and messages out of this episode that I think, fits in well, stylistically, morality-wise, meaning-wise, with what we look for, in an episode of Trek. And now, when we tune into an episode of the Orville, we know we're going to get these kind of things. That, what did you call it? Social responsibility?
While I was watching this episode, it became one of my favorite all-time shows, just because of how much it's transcending even the quote-unquote formula of Star Trek. And it is a show that lovingly started as, hey, we like Star Trek, let's do our own kind of thing.
And like I said, and it's obvious at this point that it has become its own thing. It really has. So
darn good.
Yeah.
And it's excellent storytelling. And the shift to Hulu has just given us more to love.
Absolutely. And we got, you mentioned somebody before who may be back soon. So why don't you bring it home and we'll let these people go.
Mission Log the Orville is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Technical production by I'm trusting this is a good word because I've never heard it before, Assiduous Earl Green. Is that right?
Assiduous.
Oh, okay, that's why. Assiduous. What does that mean?
Means hardworking and irreplaceable, I think.
Assiduous. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is podcast.roddenberry.com.
If you'd like to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog. This gives you access to the Mission Log Discord, with hailing frequencies open on Wednesday nights at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific, where we discuss the latest episode of the Orville New Horizons. Join us next time on Mission Log the Orville as we discuss a tale of two topas.
Oh, I didn't realize that was the name of this episode. Okay, I'll see you then.
That's the name of it. Bye.
Bye. This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.